Hello, and welcome back. Now that we've talked about the introduction to generative AI and what it is, the question really is, how can we use it? So you can use it for asking questions about stuff you're interested in. You can ask it for a variety of assorted questions, but really we're here to focus on law. And so let's look at ways in general that people are using generative AI. For example, they're using it to create software, to create visual designs, or to provide feedback on images, websites, and video. Because not only can it write, but the generative aspect of it lets it also evaluate, summarize, provide feedback, and even write prompts of its own. So you might start to get more personalized outreach emails or texts, and they're not really written for you by a person, they're written by an AI that has extracted some data about you to make the letter seem more personal and to make you therefore more likely to respond to it. In human resources, people are writing letters with customized tone and content to apply for jobs. And similarly, employers are using generative AI to respond to the wave of applicants, sometimes also culling the resumes and cover letters using generative AI. And finally, in education, the goal is to provide better education, partly by summarizing content and helping students understand material, but also the AI can quiz you on content and let you respond in a non-judgmental way. And you can determine whether you know it or not, what your weak spots are, and basically have a personalized tutor without ever getting a grade or facing the embarrassment or whatever other emotions you feel when being evaluated by another person. So there are a wide range of ways that AI can be used. Um, in this one, the rest of the session, we're going to be talking about primarily textual uses. And so how are lawyers using AI right now? One way is in law practice management. So this would be writing letters to people, engagement letters, involved in streamlining your business practices, your billing, your accounts payable. It would be drafting documents. It could be memos. It could be contracts. It could be cease and desist letters. Things that might have taken you half an hour can now take you 5 or 10 minutes, because if you're starting from an AI generated draft, and remember, this is a starting point, not a final product, you can then edit the document to your liking and have something to respond to rather than a blank sheet of paper. Some lawyers are starting to use AI for legal research, primarily using more reliable tools like Lexis Westlaw and other legal database providers who are building in generative AI features. ChatGPT and other general AIs are not yet ready for prime time in the context of legal research. We'll see where that goes over time. One thing that AI is great at doing is comparing contracts. So if you have a contract from the other party and you have the content that you would like in it, you can determine either how to merge them or what's different, or extract clauses from your personal brief bank or from a vendor's brief bank, and try to insert clauses that are more favorable to your client based on existing contracts of the same type. Document automation means really when you're filling out forms or you're otherwise creating a large set of documents, automating those and the creation of them so that you only have to enter a name once and it's distributed throughout the document could be extremely useful. E-discovery, going through piles of papers and electronic documents, is made much easier with AI. You can train the AI for what you're looking for, and then have it find the documents that are most similar to the type of content that you're looking for. Predictive analytics is a tool that will let you look at a certain judge, for example, and you have Judge Smith. You have a summary judgment motion before Judge Smith. So you might say, well, when has Judge Smith granted summary judgment in the past in my type of case? Oh, these 3 points are the most commonly the grounds for granting a motion for summary judgment. When is he most frequently denied summary judgment, and what are the reasons why those denials have occurred? And then you could try to blend that knowledge of that particular judge with the facts of your case to write the most persuasive motion possible. And finally, lawyers are using marketing. Uh, Marketing is time consuming and often not the primary goal of why people go into law. And so AI tools can help you efficiently market your practice and distinguish you from other lawyers by either targeted marketing to particular populations or other types of tools without you having to handcraft every single document. But again, just as a caveat, these are not final documents. You should review anything the AI generates before having it leave your office or showing it to someone else, really. Now, those were tasks, right? Those are tasks that lawyers do. But this is a different way of looking at ways that you can use AI, whether it's in school or in legal practice. For example, you might consider that brainstorming, what are the possible arguments I could make in this context? Or what are the different ways of framing this concern I have about this agreement? So you could use generative AI almost as someone you chat with to explore possibilities or maybe even come up with new ideas. And then you can modify those and draft a document that includes those ideas and have a better legal practice, have saved time, and also used technology efficiently, which is something you need to learn how to do to be an efficient 21st century lawyer. People have used generative AI to generate deposition and interview questions. Because they're generally common questions, you can have it generate questions and then give it a fact pattern and have it extract possible questions for your fact pattern. Some of them you probably thought about, or they're in every common interrogatories form book, but others might be specific to your situation and particularly useful. So having them draft those questions and then you edit them is a great way to go instead of starting with a blank sheet of paper and wondering, what should I say? In law school and in law, sometimes you'll face topics that you've never faced before that are exceptionally complicated and tangled. So what you can do in those cases is ask the AI to read the document or read the article or read the case and then summarize it, and you can actually ask the AI questions about it. So I'd suggest trying this. There are some tools, even called Chat PDF, where you upload a PDF and you can just chat with that document and try to grapple with what the author was saying. And especially if it's complex, maybe get some greater insight into the document and the points in it than you would just reading it and then putting it down and trying to figure it all out. Issue spotting. AI can be useful in issue spotting. For example, if you have a fact pattern and you said, what questions would you have based on this set of actions or facts? You can sometimes have it disclose legal or non-legal issues that you might not have thought of. You might have assumed it and jumped over it, or you might not have considered asking about it at all. So it's a good way for spotting things that are in your blind spot that you might miss. Just as with interrogatories, they can generate voir dire questions. They can draft a first draft, but never a final draft. But they can get you started. So you never need to start with a blank sheet of paper, either as a student or in legal practice, so long as the course that you're in permits it, and so long as it is not considered plagiarism based on the context within which you're operating. For legal research, you can use generative AI, but as I said, beware. The products are changing quickly, but right now, general tools, whether ChatGPT or Claude or Bard or Bing, are not appropriate for legal research. They still give too many hallucinations or made-up answers for you to rely on them for legal research. But that's changing very quickly, and by 2025 or 2026, that might be the norm. We'll see. So what can we expect? We've talked about what lawyers do in terms of their functions and in terms of the processes that they go through. Where are we headed? So one area that we're headed is probably with validated citations, relying on reliable legal data. Database vendors are giving us tools now that look up cases and tell you whether they're legitimate cases and even whether they're good law before they ever deliver the result to you. So we expect to see a combination of a brief cite, a key cite or a cite checker, a shepherdizing, combined with the results of generative AI, all brought together to bring you a far more robust and reliable package. It's not quite here yet, but I expect it's coming very, very soon. And in the meantime, we're going to trust these documents, but we're also going to verify that the cases exist and have all the attorneys around the country testing these tools. And at a certain point, there's going to be a general consensus that the tool is now reliable. And we'll know that when we stop hearing about cases where companies or lawyers are sued because they used this product and it gave them a poor answer and they relied on it. So expect to have better, faster legal research tools in the near future. They'll also let you converse with primary and secondary legal sources. You can ask questions of a document, as I talked about, but you can also ask questions of a treatise. Like, why is X the rule? Or you could have it compare states and say which states have this type of law versus that type of law. Again, using this in a context of legal research database, it's bringing together the statutes of 50 states combined with the power of generative AI to give you a more robust and succinct analysis of the laws of 50 states on a particular topic. You'll be able to generate legal documents with proper citations, and you can use hyperlinks to go back and actually read those documents, the citations, the cases, the statutes, and you'll also be able to select the citation format you want. So I would imagine that very soon you'll be able to get Blue Book ready citations from generative AI, because what it'll do is understand the document type, understand the Blue Book rule, and then integrate those two into a properly Blue Booked memo. There will be automatic transaction document review. So this is when a contract arrives in your inbox, it may already be analyzed based on the previous draft you sent out, what the opposing party or another party sent you, along with what has changed and proposed additions or modifications. So you may be doing that yourself in terms of a final read through, but you may have some automated behind the scenes processes occurring to improve the document or to propose alternatives that you can either accept or reject, much like we have with track changes now in Word. And the final, most powerful tool, especially if you're in a law firm, is going to be integration of your documents, things that you've created for work, possibly other briefs that other lawyers in your firm have created as work product, along with existing reliable legal content, whether that is dockets, like other motions filed, or cases, or statutes. And with the integration of what you've created combined with these reliable legal pieces is going to provide this very, very powerful tool that we haven't really had before, where the document management system is talking to the legal research system. I want to touch on a point that's important here. You've all been using generative AI on Bing and asking it a question. Now, you've also been using Lexis and Westlaw and doing searches. And I want to highlight the difference between a chat and a search. A search is when you ask a question, and then you can modify the search by saying, no, I mean X, Y, or Z, and maybe it'll give you a result that is a subset and maybe not. In this case, chat permits you to ask about a legal situation in Washington and then say, please compare and contrast that to the similar law in Oregon. Where is it more favorable for me to file? Or what is a better choice of law and forum for a lessor in this particular situation? And then you might say, you know what? Please translate this memo into Spanish for my client. Ideally, you will read Spanish or you will read the document first, because translation is a complicated area, especially when it comes to law. But you can have it, through this chat process, refine the document to be exactly what you want. And it can explain it as if you were a fifth grader. it can translate it, it can write a memo, all sorts of other things. So don't think of it as entering a thing, getting a result, and being stuck with that result. Really, it's just the beginning of a process. And the way it does this is it remembers your past questions and it remembers its past answers. And so therefore you don't have to restart the process. You can just add as if you're having a conversation, because people generally remember what you were talking about earlier in the conversation. So each time you don't have to repeat everything you just said. That's called a context window, and that's sort of like the memory it has of your conversation. At the same time, if you want to start a new conversation, you should generally click new chat or new question, because what that'll do is wipe out all the assumptions that came with the previous question and let you start fresh. Now we've talked about what AI can do for a lawyer and sort of how to proceed in this chat process. Let's talk about some of the benefits of AI for a legal practice. Okay. The first one is more efficient lawyering. You're going to be a better lawyer and be able to get more done with generative AI. Even if you have to check the sources of the legal research memo to make sure they're good law, you're checking the sources to make sure they're good law, not doing all of the research over again. So you'll actually do things faster. Second, there are all aspects of law that we don't want to deal with, but we have to because it's part of being a lawyer and even being a law student. So what AI can do is the parts you don't want to do, whether it's drafting letters that you find unexciting or keeping time. I imagine there will be tools that automatically keep track of your time and billing matters for as long as that exists. You can improve your work product because you're going to have somebody you can always talk to and bounce ideas off of. So that give and take process of the chat iteration is going to improve what you are able to create, even within less time than it normally took you. You can also be someone other than yourself. For example, as some tools will permit you to write a more aggressive letter or write a kinder letter. And the ability just to say, please make this letter kinder or more aggressive gives you a capability that you might not naturally have. So it extends your range, your capabilities as a lawyer. And finally, sometimes generative AI will come up with ideas that you never would have thought of, or that you thought of, but kind of it never quite got to your fingertips and into the document. So AI can spark legal creativity in argument making, in contracting, and in general interpersonal relations when used with judgment. It should always be filtered through you. Okay, so there are some risks, and they're substantial, and I don't want to overstate either the benefits or the risks. So I just want to go through this and be very careful that you understand generative AI is not a person. It is not any type of an individual thinking, feeling entity at the moment. What it is it's a system that has ingested a huge amount of information and is able to predictively, based on statistics, generate paragraphs of text based on what it was fed. Okay, so it's like a parrot. It's parroting back content that is most likely related to your subject and most likely correct based on its mathematical algorithms. That does not mean that it's always right, even if it sounds right. So you really have to approach AI products with skepticism. Secondly, AI, because it fills in content predictively, it will hallucinate. It will create a case because let's say that you have there's a matter and it cites a case. It might be 363 and then it says US. Well, the reason it says US is because the US Supreme Court is most oftenly cited in its data set. So it plugs in after a number and a legal topic, it plugs in US. Then it might pick a page number that commonly appears after US. This is oversimplifying it, but you've then created a false citation that doesn't exist to a case that doesn't exist. This is being dealt with by legal vendors, legal information vendors by so-called retrieval augmented generation. What that means is it's comparing the output to its database of cases to make sure that hallucinations are not occurring based on the legal content. So we're going to learn a lot more about that over the coming few years, but hallucinations are an issue with early AI, and they may not be an issue with legal AI in 6 months, let's say. Some other risks are, sounds overly confident. It says something authoritatively that you know is wrong. You can ask it to be less authoritative, and we'll talk about how to do that in the next section on prompting. There's a lack of transparency about transformers. We don't really understand necessarily why it came up with this set of words, and it's very difficult to say, why did you put word X after word Y? So there's a challenge in the process in that it's a black box. And there are people looking at how to make the process more transparent, but as of now, you have to look at the output and compare it to what you would have said, and just verify it as such rather than figuring out why did it say what it said. Privacy concerns and confidentiality concerns, this is still the Wild West, so I would not suggest entering confidential information about your clients or your firm or yourself, because it's just best to keep it out of systems that are connected to the internet where you don't know how the data might otherwise be used. The other alternative is to read the licensing agreement and feel comfortable with the terms of it, but that often is so time consuming that it may not be worthwhile. If you have it write a memo and you want it to be for Mrs. Jones, you can always put in a place filler like Mr. Smith and then do a search and replace and change all the Mr. Smiths to Mrs. Jones or something like that. And you want to make sure that your data is not used for training. That way, anything that you type in will not be regurgitated to someone else accidentally, and they'll learn something just because they were searching on the same topic or something like that. So that is not the case for any legal vendors, but it's something to look out for. Make sure that your conversations are not being used for training the model. Now, there's discussion about lawyers and court systems and how AI is going to affect them. I think it's going to affect legal research substantially. But I think that we are not at the point yet where most people are ready to accept lawyering and or judging solely by AI. And one important thing to think about is that if we're going to regulate AI, and if there's a context not to use it, it's don't use it or rely on it when it has a significant impact on someone's life, like their livelihood, certainly not in criminal contexts, but don't rely on it for these important life decisions for which a generalized empirical approach is not appropriate. So in thinking about it, we will all have jobs because we still have to deal with people and emotions and challenges that go well beyond the logic of legal research. So I don't think this is a profession that's going to vanish and we're not going to all rely on robo-lawyers and robo-courts. We may, for some, small claims areas or some other types of repeated litigation at a small level, but I think that we have to watch out and not let it take over and impact people's lives and livelihoods. Now, areas that we haven't covered but that I want to flag are, were these systems trained on copyrightable content? Yes, they were. Was it a fair use? Is the training a fair use? We don't know. We're watching the courts for that, and there will likely be a flood of cases, and we may end up with a different regime than we have now. It may be a licensing regime. It may be considered fair use. There may be some other solution. So that's important. The other thing is the copyrightability of the output. In general, you'll be using and creating content, but it will be also submitted to courts. So the other question is whether what comes out of these systems is copyrightable. And we won't be touching on that today. User privacy, please, consider whatever you are telling the AI to be telling the Seattle Times. You don't want to disclose information about your clients for fear that the data might get out there. So again, you can use a pseudonym or something of the sort. Looking forward, and we're going to have a section on ethics, but one thing is that there are people who would consider using AI to be unethical because you're using it without telling the client and you're saving time, but you didn't tell them you relied on AI. Okay. There are other people who say, well, not using AI is inefficient and you could have saved me money by using AI, so you should always use AI. We're in a period where those two are in some tension, and we'll continue to explore that and see how it shakes out. Finally, how much is this the unauthorized practice of law? How much will automation become pseudo-lawyering or quasi-lawyering or threatened bar associations? And we just don't know the answer to that, but we expect that that will shake out again over time. But these are some issues to be aware of at least. So the three takeaways from this session: as a lawyer or a law student, you never need to start with a blank sheet of paper. It's appropriate to use AI for brainstorming, for first drafts, to get ideas, just as you would bounce ideas off a person. Okay. You should gain familiarity with AI by using it for low stakes tasks. So writing letters, your hobbies, whatever the case may be, just so that you're comfortable with what AI can and can't do. Even though it's always changing and likely always improving, we need to be prepared to use it in our professional lives by using it in lower stakes areas of our lives. And finally, if you don't like the result that you get, chat further as if it were an assistant. We're going to talk more about prompt engineering in the next session, but if you don't like a result because it's too brief, say, please expand this to 500 words and see what it comes up with. And then maybe you go in and tighten it up to 250 or whatever the case may be. But don't think, oh, this is all I can get, because that is never the case. Prompts are the key to getting what you want. We'll talk more about that in the next session, which is crafting prompts. Thank you.